this is sort of the red pill moment, right? I started to think this way. Something happened. Some switch got flipped, and I've never recovered. My interest in fatherhood went from like a 2 to a 10.
And if you start seeing it like, hey, I'm coaching a team, I'm coaching these kids, it like ignites a purpose. I'm not just gonna sit back and be lazy and lay on the couch and let everyone else do the things. You got skills, treat it like a team. It's like taking the tool and just kind of slowly evolving it.
Christians tend to tell each other, just do your duty. We know family kind of sucks. We know it's like not that great. We know that there's other things you could do that are more, exciting for you individually. But, you should just buckle down and do your duty as a father or as a mother. I think we need to understand that the vision that God actually created, the kind of family God actually created us to live inside of, is something I think we all are longing for.
This is the Unleash Your Purpose podcast.
Hey, welcome back to the Unleash Your Purpose podcast with your host, Ryan Centers. I'm real excited and honored to have a mentor and friend of mine on the podcast today, all the way from Cincinnati, Mr. Jeremy Pryor. Welcome.
Hey, Ryan.
Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
We've got a chance to have some battle wounds together and sharing kind of our experiences of parenthood, and I've learned so much from you. And man, you're on it almost feels like what you're doing and kind of the mission that is in front of you in regards to family and parenthood is new in a lot of ways for people. I've never heard this before, but it's actually like you're going back really old. Right. You're going ancient ways of developing a family. And you and I how we got connected was I read your book, and it was over a Christmas break, and I devoured it. And within probably in the middle of the night, I had to just go on your website and inquire of how to do coaching and be part of this community, because it was like a longing of my heart for so long. And it's something that I have believed in, but I never had like anyone else that saw it that way. And I was like, oh, I'm not alone in this. So thanks for all the investment in me.
That's awesome, Ryan. Yeah, I think there's a lot of us in that situation where you can sense something's wrong, and then you start to explore alternative pathways, but that just causes a lot of isolation. And so we do need to find each other. So yeah, this has been a big passion, because I think that a lot of dads, a lot of families that are trying to think differently, go back to ancient ways of doing family. Yeah, we need to work together, because there's a lot of trial and error, a lot of need to compare notes.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. Yeah, so kind of help my audience kind of understand kind of your family. You came from Pacific Northwest. Now you live in the Midwest, but you had kind of a stint in Israel that really was kind of foundational for your kind of understanding of family. So yeah, just share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah. So currently, we live in Cincinnati. We've got 5 kids. 4 of them are now adults, and so 2 are married, 1's engaged. We have a grandson and 2 more granddaughters on the way. So we are growing family. We live in a 4-generation house in Cincinnati. So Right now, my daughter lives with us, and my son-in-law. They are rehabbing the house across the street. So we're gonna, kind of expand on the street, which is gonna be a lot of fun. And my parents live with us. We have kind of
that is the dream, baby.
It is awesome.
I want you next to me, but I don't want you in my house.
Right,
that's at least how I.
Exactly. Yeah. There needs to be a dial, and it's not like 100% like in each other's space. We're really big into the phrase "one kitchen, one vision." So if you're going to be a separate household, you need to have your own kitchen. And so we've got our house actually has 4 kitchens, so that we can be together. It's very modular. It was a duplex originally, and then it kept sprawling. Anyway, so we do live kind of this multi-generational lifestyle, and all of our kids are they're completely on board. We really love being together, and a lot of babies coming. But not exactly where I started. So to answer your question, I grew up in the Seattle area, and Seattle's a rough place for family. There's kind of a tendency in the United States for people that are more individualistic to move west. That's kind of like the frontier. It's where you go to kind of find yourself. And so, and individualism and family kind of collide. And so one of the things I grew up with is I grew up in a town that was brand new. Nobody was from there. It was just growing at, right when we moved there. It's kind of sprawling suburbia south of Seattle. And there was just a experience of breakdown of family that is in a very advanced state. Now, it's just what I grew up with, so I didn't know anything was different. But I was a youth pastor for a while there, doing a lot of youth ministry, mostly with public school kids. And man, it looked like family was an experiment that had gone completely off the rails. And so we're just surrounded by brokenness, where it was just like, whose idea was this family thing? Does it actually work? You know, even if people do stay married, are they happy about it? Like, so I wasn't excited about the prospect of being a father, and I didn't quite know how to think about it. My family's intact, and my parents, you know, they did a really good job with us, and so I have seen, and I fortunately really experienced a lot of stability in my childhood, thanks to my parents. But there was just brokenness everywhere, and it came to this idea of family in so many different contexts. So I was looking to do a semester abroad. I've been and am constantly trying to understand the Old Testament. It's been a major passion of my life. And so I went when I was 23, single guy, went from Seattle to Jerusalem for about 4.5 months. And in addition to meeting my wife there, which was amazing, I also encountered a paradigm of family that I didn't think existed anymore. So I kept running into the scene of different fathers with children, especially lots of children. Jerusalem is a place where there's an extremely unusually high birth rate for a developed area of the world. And so I just saw this everywhere I went. There was one day I was actually just sitting on a bench, and I watched as a whole group of fathers pushing strollers with all these little kids in tow just kind of walked past me. And I was like, that is so weird. Like, why do they want to have so many kids? So because I was so confused about the topic of family, and I wasn't passionate about it in any way, I just started asking questions. And I had a few Jewish and a couple Arab fathers that were friends of mine that I developed connections with while I was living in Jerusalem. I started asking questions like, hey, where did this culture of fathers wanting to have children, where does that come from? And the first response they gave me was just the Bible. It's in the Bible. And I was like, that's weird. And coming from Jewish fathers, their Bible is actually in our Bible, right? Their Bible, the Tanakh, is the Old Testament. And so I was like, well, where exactly in the Bible? Because I grew up in a very Christian culture, and this level of passion for large families, especially coming from men, this is not something I really have seen before. And they said, well, Abraham, of course, And I was like, Abraham? I mean, I had just studied Abraham intensively the semester before. I was doing a graduate program, and I've always been fascinated by the character of Abraham. But in the entire semester where we were doing a deep dive on Abraham, we never once really discussed Abraham as a father. We talked about him as like this character of faith, and a lot of the stories of the kind of seen through the lens of the new covenant, but never really took seriously his paradigm about family. I just thought it was primitive, right? He was obsessed with multi-generational family. Like he was crying out to God to make his descendants expand, right? He wanted, and God was promising him, I'm going to make your descendants like the stars in the sky, like the sand on the seashore. And so this passion for large multi-generational family lines, I thought was sort of just a vestige of some kind of very primitive era. But encountering like modern men in today's world who thought this way, and then saw that caused them to be extremely passionate about their families, about fatherhood, it was really jarring for me. And so I just kind of ran the thought experiment. I just was like, okay, let's say this is the way the Bible articulates the value of children, that it is the privilege and blessing of every father and mother to build a multi-generational family. Like what would happen if I really believed that? If I really saw my life as, and one of the main goals of my life, to build a multi-generational family line. And it was weird. I mean, this is sort of the red pill moment, right? I started to think this way, and something happened. Some switch got flipped, and I've never recovered. I suddenly went from like, my interest in fatherhood went from like a 2 to a 10, like that. And so
Wow.
we can go into more details on why I think that happens, but I've seen this happen to many, many men, and it suddenly
Yeah.
made sense of why I was seeing the culture I saw in the Middle East around fatherhood and family.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's like it's so interesting that you're watching this paradox of these two cultures, and we grow up in this Western culture where when you're talking about like the breakdown of the family, I don't even think we recognize when we say the breakdown of the family, most times we probably don't even understand what we're saying because we're just swimming in
Yes.
it. But like we're talking like, man, when you have 50 to 70% single mom rate
That's right.
in many parts of in our country, when you're talking like I just feel for I have a friend of mine who teaches at the college with me and is 40 years old and is now grieving that she never had kids, but it was so focused on just their future and intellectually doing that thing, which is great in their choice. But I think they're always what she articulated to me is like, I've always just been fed that this is what I do.
Yes.
But there's been this longing of my heart for something more.
Yes.
And you're talking like as you went to Israel, you saw this longing and I think for men especially, fatherhood is a side tangent versus the thing that God has put us on this earth to do. And like you keep saying and one of the things I want to help people to understand is like you're talking like multi-generational family. Like I think that's kind of a unique approach, unique old approach.
Yes.
But like you're saying fourth generation, so you have your kids, you guys, and your grandparents, and now your grandkids, right?
Yes.
That are all kind of together on a shared mission together, right?
Yes.
Is that kind of how you would describe it?
Right. Yes. And that's the ecosystem through which I believe God designed our lives to be lived out of, as opposed to these fragments of families that many of us experience. And we don't know why family doesn't work. And the reality is family doesn't work very well. I mean, it's very, very difficult to get family to work if you're only a fragile little nuclear family, right?
Totally. So, you got two kids. It is so stressful. There is so much, like you got bills and you're driving here or there. I mean, we got 9 kids and my kids are involved in sports. And like, if I didn't have my grandparents close and like and tag them in to kind of help out, and it is a joy for them actually to be a part of this. And I love like when you're talking about like my dream is to have my in-laws living next door to me, my mom living next door to me, and my kids being so involved in a part of this. Like that's the joy of my
that's normal life. That's normal life in virtually every advanced culture for thousands of years. That's the way families have lived, and that's why family has worked. And now we're running an experiment to see, well, if we all just sort of blow apart every generation and we don't really honor or think about our ancestors or where we came from or the previous generations, we just prioritize ourselves as an individual and we build up this little nuclear family as a grouping of individuals. Does that work? And I think the data's in. I don't think that works. I think that's very fragile, and I think it really hurts people. It hurts women, it hurts men, it hurts children. And nobody really seems to be looking at that because it's an experiment. In other words, the reason why I'm calling it an experiment is because it hasn't really been tried this way before. And so it's one thing to try an experiment and go, oh, that didn't work. Let's go back to the way it's been done for thousands of years. It's another thing to try an experiment, see it doesn't work, and then double down and triple down and quadruple down, which is what we're doing. And nobody's talking about, hey, there's an old, ancient, normal way of doing family that works really, really well. And for those of us who really do want to have children, we need to really think about, we have to contrast these two ideas.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it's an experiment, like your partner who does family teams ministry with you wrote another book, kind of a complement to yours. I think it was called Take Back Your Family. And he looked at like the American culture in this experiment that we've tried to do since the 70s, right? Or even a little bit earlier, where it went from, we were in communities together. There were shared resources in regards like parents helping out with the kids, and then it was almost just like nuclear was the status quo. You saw that on TV. you're just smiling with your two kids.
Right.
What people don't realize is the undergird
Yes.
anxiety, the amount of pressure.
Yes.
Then you fast forward now so many families it's roommates.
Right.
Like
Well,
everyone's doing their own. It's going even more extreme. Now
yes.
you're
Oh, yeah. It's
individuals
breaking
living
down.
together.
Yeah. Well, the thing that oftentimes we say family values, or we need to get back to traditional family, virtually everyone in our culture thinks we're talking about the 1950s nuclear family. And sociologists will tell you that only existed for 15 years of human history, essentially from like 1940 or 1955, maybe 1945 to 1960. That 15 years, the Leave it to Beaver years, that was the one time we attempted to do that. And I think there was a certain level of stability because the United States at the time, because we just won World War II, was the richest nation in the world. The GIs were coming back. There was some really, really unique things that occurred in that 15 years that made that sustainable for this giant middle class that suddenly erupted after the war. But it still was incredibly fragile. I mean, we saw what happened in the 60s, right? The divorce rate just exploded. There was enormous dissatisfaction. The housewife kind of phenomenon that feminists really attacked because they were really isolated in this culture. It kind of created this one size fits all a box for women. And so it's understandable why we blew that up. And I'm never going to advocate that we go back to that. I don't think it worked. I don't think it's sustainable. But has nothing to do with the way the Bible describes family. It has nothing to do with the traditional family that we see in cultures for thousands of years before that. But unfortunately, this is sort of as far back as our memory tends to go. And so, in Jefferson Bethke's book, Take Back Your Family, he really, goes back to the Industrial Revolution. Really, what began to happen in the mid 1800s was actually the seeds of the modern family, the way we see it today. And anyone, by the way, anyone listening to this, you're hearing this, you're like, wow, that sounds like water under the bridge. No, anyone listening to this, literally right now, you could just say, I don't like that idea of family. I'm gonna go back to the ancient one. It's a free country. I mean, whoever's listening to this, I hope you live in a free country. But if you do, you can do this. You can just say, I'm going to go back to an ancient blueprint for family. And so we started family teams to try to help people figure out how to start kind of reboot that ancient kind of family. And by the way, that ancient kind of family was incredibly functional. It created enormous stability. It was so meaningful. I mean, there was so much purpose. It's hard to even like describe to modern people the level, the depth of meaning that ancient people had around this idea of family, coming from this paradigm. And the really surprising thing for a lot of people is the person that was most likely to be the most passionate about family in ancient times was the father. The father himself. Now, in the modern paradigm of family, the father is the least likely to defend and to attempt to invest and sacrifice for the family. So this transition has been incredibly devastating for children because you've got this epidemic of fatherlessness that just continues to go out of control. But we don't really think to root the actual cause of fatherlessness all the way back to this broken idea of family that got then replaced with this kind of nest maternal vision of the nuclear family. None of these really appeal to the majority of men, particularly masculine men. And so we're not going to fix this problem if we just continue to push further and further and further down the road we're on.
Yeah, that's good. And it's like you're kind of in your movement, you're like igniting hundreds of fathers and men to say like, hey, when we talk about like, hey, this is your first ministry and like this is like your identity and the call of your life. And I'm like, as Sarah and I get to live this out, I mean, when I think about our life, like that is the stuff that brings me the most joy. Watching my son kind of rise up, and he made a club team. He was at a club team for the first time and is working so hard for this. Or my other son who has been in foster care for 5 years, and just yesterday we have go look at got his report card, and 2 years ago he was at like the 3rd percentile and now he's at the 15th. And I'm like,
nice.
This is awesome. This is huge. And yeah, I think parents in general, like, but and just watching them grow and be intentional and have, as we look forward to like even next year, as helping them start their own business and things like that. Like that stuff is the stuff that lights me up and is like, that's the stuff I want to continue to invest all of myself into.
It's just starting. I mean, the thing that's really different about multi-generational families is that fathers who lead multi-generational families, when their kids turn 18, they feel like they're just getting started on the collaboration between the generations. And this is not about being controlling and telling your kids where they have to work or what they have to do. This is about a kind of relationship that has always existed. Like you see this in the New Testament when Jesus would use the word son. Like he told that famous parable of the tenants when he kept sending various servants and he's like, I'm going to send my son. They'll respect my son, right? The word son didn't mean like a 5-year-old the way it does today. In ancient times, in the New Testament, what Jesus was talking about was a certain kind of relationship that a father had with a son. And it was an adult son. That is so unique. The relationship that a father or a mother in a multi-generational family has with an adult son or daughter, that the siblings have with each other, that lasts a lifetime. Like these bonds and these connections that bring stability and meaning to life and allow you to go so much farther and work together as a team and collaborate. These things, this is so much more rich of a way to live. And this is, I think, why part of the reason why we have this weird struggle, this kind of paradigm where our kids turn 18, we cut them off, we send them out, we're saying we did our job. This is devastating to this is a very strange thing to do. Again, we were designed to live in these larger multi-generational tribes or clans. And one of the gifts I think that's occurring in the economy today is we have now emerging the first generation.
Forcing it.
What's that?
It's forcing it.
Exactly.
That we're having to.
Because this is the first generation where they're expected to have less economically than their parents. And so that means that if the parents cut their children off, then their kids are going to actually experience a kind of economic struggle that they've never encountered. And so, and I think this is a mixed blessing. I think this is going to be devastating for a lot of families, a lot of individuals who are continuing this experiment of resetting every generation. But I think that, if it starts to force generations to say, hey, no, we're going to help you get your first house. We're going to help you get established. We're going to help you with the kids. We want to work together as a team. Let's stay together. Let's really build a tribe or a clan as a family, as an extended family unit. And what you need to have, if you're going to think that way, is you need to have a patriarch, this ancient thing that is so demonized in our culture today. The role of the patriarch historically was to create this kind of clan ecosystem so that the next generations would not suffer, so that there would be an opportunity for there to be cross-generational collaboration. It wasn't so they could dominate everyone. The whole reason why the idea of patriarch has gotten such a bad name is because we first start by assuming everyone's an individual. And then, of course, if that's true in a family and that there's sort of a scarce number of resources, and you give some guy, because why? He's the man, I guess. You give him the power in this environment of collection of individuals, then that's just unfair. And he's going to take advantage of that and be selfish with that power because everyone's just in it for themselves. Well, of course, if that's your paradigm of family, then the patriarchy is a terrible idea. But man, if you're trying to build a multi-generational family for the flourishing of everyone, having a visionary father leading that is an incredible advantage. And you see this play out over and over and over again. Just like we have our experiments we're running today where families are blowing up and disintegrating left and right, we have thousands of years of experiments of families led by patriarchs that have created this kind of flourishing ecosystem. So this is challenging for a lot of people in our Western modern society, but I think this is in everyone's best interest for us to take a step back and relook at what we discarded so thoughtlessly.
Yeah, and it's like you're thinking about multi-generational family. Like when I think about the biggest joys of my life is this summer or now almost every vacation. Like one of the things that Sarah and I have put so much effort in intentionality into is that we want to make sure that grandparents go on every vacation with us, that my daughter and her son go, and my son-in-law go on vacation with us, because we have 4 generations going together, experiencing play, intentional time. We like walking on the beach together. And when I think of, for me, like the heaven on earth
Yes.
moments of my life. Those
So
are
meaningful. Yes.
it's not like being an individual and me going to play golf on
Right.
my own or with a buddy. Like it's
Yeah.
fun, but like the deep parts of a man's
Yeah.
soul, the deep parts of who you are those
Yes.
things.
Those moments.
Is like watching your kid rise
Yes.
up and laugh together. And I mean, for some reason, like you can sit in those moments, you can sit around the table for an hour and a
Yeah.
half.
Yeah.
And some people think we have different like people that'll come over to our house and visit, and they're like, wait, sit together, wait, and the little kid's
Yes.
praying,
Yes.
and we play cards, and it's like it's an event.
Yeah.
It's a moment.
Yes.
It's not something to rush off and go.
No.
Because we're trying to like what multi-generational families, I think you're trying to reach the kid's soul, and it's a part of, and it's also like just a part of you, and you're just getting this depth that I think is missing. That you're talking about brokenness. Everyone is, when you're trying to do it on your own, you are stressed the heck out.
It's too much.
There's not enough to go around. Yeah, life is too busy and too hard to do it on your own.
I love it, like you're describing kind of those moments of meaning. So in the current way of thinking about family, oftentimes your life loses more meaning the older you get. And so you have this incredible epidemic of just putting, and this is going to get so much worse the next 10 or 20 years, putting old people with no purpose, no meaning, completely isolate them in various nursing homes or whatever, because there's no one really alive to care for them. And so their life, the meaning of their life just got smaller and smaller the older they got. In a multi-generational family, it's inverted. The meaning of your life goes up exponentially. My father-in-law, when he was alive, he came every single week to our Sabbath dinner, where our whole family, multi-generational family, just sat around. We have about 16 or so of us that meet for dinner every Friday evening. And there was a point in virtually every single Friday night, the year before he died, where some point he just couldn't talk anymore. He would just start tearing up. And I watched this happen week after week, and I think I began to realize that he can't contain the amount of meaning he's feeling right now. Like, he's at this table, he sees his descendants, he sees the flourishing family that he's built, he sees the depth of relationship, and he can see it's just getting started. And he's, nearing the end of his life, and he's just pouring out wisdom. He had told stories virtually every week to our kids and to our family. And I think it was just, he couldn't contain it. It was like so amazing to just be alive, to see and experience that. And I think that is actually very normal. If you design family in this way, the meaning goes up and up and up until you really want to stay alive as long as possible, because the every single year you're watching your flourishing family just become more fruitful, more connected, and so it's just such a beautiful way to experience the sunset of your life versus either running off to retirement and kind of being completely isolated, or what then happens shortly thereafter, which is to live and die alone.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the elderly, like there's like two versions that you see. One is like old and cranky and alone and isolated, or someone that is experiencing such joy and blessing and abundance and like this sense of flourishing. And you're like, okay, well, what is that? And over and over and over again, what is it? It's not all the stuff. It's not that they've waited and saved all this money. It's the relationships that's there.
That's right.
And it's the depth, and it's like the family that has been created, everyone is starving for. And it's like, and I agree for my friends who like say, hey, this, some people, maybe that's not their thing, but I'm like, man, you're missing such a, like, the most fulfilling part of at least Sarah and I's life.
Yeah.
Is being with our kids and watching them grow. And then like, I cannot wait for the day, like, to build a business with my kids, I dream like my daughter to be the first female CEO of Ohana before she has kids, I can't believe, like, watching my son, like, help him build a trades company because he just loves that. And we're opening up our thrift store next year, and watching them kind of learn how to sell and resell things and work with our special needs community. I'm like, oh goodness. Like that just lights a passion and it's like, this is what it's
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
you
Most
know?
people, like you said earlier, your friend who just, they have a really hard time knowing what they're missing. And they've been told that the way that you live a good life is you pursue kind of individual identities, individual accomplishments. And like I mentioned, if I bought into that originally as well. I wasn't that excited to be a father, and it looked like something that just family was something that was broken. But I think that what is so different that we need to really get the word out about is, we're taking on this value. A lot of people listening to this might think, oh, well, I don't really know if I want to have a family, and so many of those desires that we just are like, well, it depends on what you want, and they've been cultivated for years around this Western idea of family, and you may have never really thought about, maybe instead of having a nest, maybe what I could build as a team. Instead of having a building out family to be a springboard for individual success, maybe it could be a multi-generational team on mission. I mean, who doesn't want to be a part of a thriving team where the relationships are maximally meaningful, and that they get to accomplish things that are the most important things that they could be working on with the people they love the most.
You said nest, not a
Yeah,
team, right? All right.
Yes, I think it's really important to look at the words we use, the analogies that really resonate with us, and I think that the best way if you had one word to describe the Western idea of family, it's the word nest. That's why we say that people that no longer have kids in the house are empty nesters, and that even sort of describes the trajectory of what the family is. It's a nest is basically a bird's nest is something that just self-destructs as soon as the chickies fly away, and that is what the Western family does. So that is in contrast to a team. And I believe that it's really clear from the Bible that God designed families to be a team. It says in Genesis 1, when God created the first family, he tells them to be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. So this is something that he gives them a mission. He says it to them as a team, not to an individual. And he gives them a mission that's so enormous to fill the earth and subdue it. Like, you can't do that in one generation. Adam and Eve couldn't have done that on their own. So it's clear that given the mission that God gave the family, he designed it to be a multi-generational team on mission. And the fact that we're building it as nests and not teams, I think, is the root of the breakdown of the family. This is the reason why this is not working. And so what we oftentimes, like Christians tend to tell each other, just do your duty. We know family kind of sucks. We know it's like not that great. We know that there's other things you could do that are more exciting for you individually. But you should just buckle down and do your duty as a father or as a mother. And that's not a very compelling vision. I think we need to understand that there is the vision that God actually created, the kind of family God actually created us to live inside of, is something I think we all are longing for. Oftentimes you'll hear people, just sort of whimsically like wish for community in their life. This is a word that just people use a lot. Just like, oh, I just need friendship. Yeah. I just need community. What they're really lacking is these deep relationships that used to exist within families, multi-generational families. Yeah. And we're trying to find some kind of alternative way to make up for the brokenness we're experiencing, because the kind of nest family that we've created just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, because the longing of your heart is deep relationship. And if it's being developed within your family, like, for so often you're like always striving for friendships and relationships. And I have friends, right? But I think they have come so much secondary because of I only have a finite amount of time, and the deep relationships and energy that I get the most satisfaction from, and what I'm called to in the mission is the depth of this family. Yes. And I remember we have a ministry that we have our support in India, and we've been there countless times, and it's Eastern culture, mostly Hindu, even in the Hindu culture, but this is a Christian organization, and they have children's homes. But I watch as it's like the kids are all part of the business and ministry too. Yeah. Okay, the son now is 18, 19 years old, and he has helped. He built a restaurant and employs the orphans that they're taking care of. The daughter is just got married and getting ready to have kids, and another aunt and uncle are pastors, and they all kind of come together and are just this beautiful. There is no shortage of people around the table together, and all like on this mission to serve. And I think one of the things that you're so good at is that when we're thinking about family and this team, like teams have to have a mission and having a focus that you're trying to do. And we're not just like a cruise liner. We got to be a battleship. We got to be a team that's like, where family is all about love, but you also have a mission that you're put on earth to do.
You got to roll deep.
And you're trying to, and we got to be doing it together.
By the way, that experience you had in India, do you know what the divorce rate is in India? I just looked it up.
I do not.
1.1%. Like, it's crazy how functional family is in these places. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. There's all kinds of brokenness. The gospel needs to redeem the classical family because it can be oppressive. But I think that it is so well designed. Like, God did such a good job when he designed the family. He did it out of love. He gave us a gift that is so amazing. And I just think that most people in the West have never even seen it or experienced it the way that God designed it.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is a call especially for dads to step up. Yeah. And it's time that you need to engage this. You don't get to be passive. Like, honestly, when I see a dad who is not engaged, my first thing is like, that's pathetic. And that's a horrible thing to think. Like, that's my intuitive thing is like, dude, you need to get your life together. You're missing the whole point of life. Like, this is the one thing. You can strive for making money and being successful and partying and doing all the stuff. But at the end of the day, that stuff is futile. And you're missing, and you're pissing it away. Like, rise up, be a man, and like get your family in order and show them how, like, what the next legacy, what the next generation of the centers can be. Right. And I'm like, my goal is like my kids stand on my shoulders. They're going to do way bigger things, right? Yeah.
But men are, I think, much more pack animal-y than they oftentimes realize. We think we're lone wolves, but we're always looking around. And I think when you're in a culture where men are constantly, have better things to do than spend time with their family, it sends a message that's really hard. Like, I ran this thought experiment once that, trying to get to the root of why men aren't stepping up the way you described. And I said, well, like imagine if we passed a law that every single Saturday, every man had to take his family to a park and compete in a sport against another family, similar ages, similar size family. And the results of that competition would be made public every week. What would happen to the engagement that fathers would have in their home with their family? If imagine a Monday going to work and all of your buddies knew exactly, how your team did. I mean, the amount of fatherhood activity would go 10x through the roof if we created this. Now, I'm not saying that we should, pass this law. I'm just saying that men don't know that they're coaching a team. And if suddenly they ever realize that, they would become so committed to that team, and they would become so skilled because they have inside of themselves already everything they need to coach a team in this way. That's what masculinity, I think, ultimately is. God has placed it inside of all of us. This is why men run around trying to root for certain teams or get on certain teams. We're built for this, but we don't realize that the primary reason we have this drive is actually not for those things, but for our families. That's the reason. And man, we got to find a way to wake that up, guys.
Yeah. And if you start seeing it like, hey, I'm coaching a team, I'm coaching these kids, it like ignites a purpose. Yes. Like, I'm not just going to sit back and be lazy and lay on the couch and let everyone else do the things. Like, okay, so for like my 3-year-old daughter, or no, she's 4. Yeah, she's 4. She, like, when we go drop her off, she doesn't want to even like greet the adult or the teacher in the room. And I say, hey, and yesterday the teacher said, I love that you do this with her. And I say, oh, hold on, we're gonna do a redo. And we walk back and say, baby, yeah, you got to coach her. Yes. Hey, when an adult greets you, you make eye contact, you say hi, how are you?
Yes.
Because why? Because at the end, I'm trying to teach her that, hey, what does it have to have social interpersonal skills, and also be able to like be a successful adult. And it starts at 3 and 4 years old. Or watching my 15-year-old who wants to date, and we're not dating yet. but how to respect a girl and how to have a conversation. He wanted to get her number and text. I was like, no, we're not texting. We don't text girls right now. I go, what? He's like, why, Dad? Everyone else does. And I go, because every other boy in your school just does this, and this is how they deal with the relationship. You need to learn how to talk to a girl in person and make eye contact and have that conversation. And he was so nervous, but now it's like the best. His study hall is the best day of his best hour of his week every week.
And what you're doing is training. And one of the things that's interesting to me is that in the New Testament, there was like one time where Paul was like, I'm going to tell fathers exactly what to do, right? Just he gave one line to the father, one line to the children, you know, in Ephesians 6, and he says, fathers, train up your children. And that idea, like in the instruction, in the training instruction of the Lord, this was the essence of what fatherhood was always understood to be. That part of our job is, and it was not like some kind of hard or frustrating duty. It's times when it's hard or frustrating, but it's actually incredibly enjoyable to train children. It's very difficult when you don't expect to do it, and it's also, I think, tough because a lot of these men weren't trained by their dads, and so they've never seen it, and so they're kind of confused about it. And so if they go and involve themselves in a sport or a profession, they have an opportunity to be trained up first and to experience that, and then you ask almost any man towards the end of his life when he's filled with experiences and wisdom, what do you want to do with your time? They all just want to mentor and train and coach and help. And I mean, what's more fun than that, than being able to pour yourself into the next generation. And that needs to come from those early stages of like helping your 3-year-old, you know, learn how to tie their shoes or go to bed or eat, you know, unusual foods, or how to interact with adults. And there's so many fun things we get to train our kids to do. And that's even just individual training. What about like team training, like training our family to function in a certain way so that we can accomplish missions together? And then of course that, like I said, that's just the practice of what's ultimately coming when your children become adults and can work together on much bigger projects.
Yeah, we literally this last week we flew out to LA for we were on some national talk show. There, flew out our family for it, and we were about 14 of us at 4 a.m. to go on a flight. And the amount of training it has taken to travel with 14 of us, then to be on, like, just to have cameras and being hair and makeup and all this stuff for hours. Like, it sounds really ridiculous and stupid, but to even get that to happen and it actually be halfway successful, even though it was very stressful and crazy, like that took many, many trips and practice to get that to happen.
Yes, I bet. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I was thinking, you know, like most people know my story is like my dad wasn't involved for most of my life, and now we're trying to get reconnected. And he always shares like his biggest regret is what you're saying. He's like, I was never around, and I just wanted to show you what it means to be a man, a son, whatever it is. And now he says the biggest like joy of his life is when he's teaching his grandkids like how to throw a baseball or how to root for his sports team. And awesome. Those are and you realize, oh, if you pull back your arrogant self and that hard shell as a man and say, what is it? Yeah. These are the things you need that really brings that lasting joy.
Yeah, man, 100%.
So how do you, like, what practically, so we're going a little over, my split into two, but do you, as you practically, is when you're thinking about multi-generational family and kind of say, okay, I get this vision, I'm in, like, what are like the first steps that someone can take?
Yeah, the first thing is
how does this look, and how does this look in real life?
Yeah, it really is important to understand that because you probably live in a culture that is pursuing family, you know, in the typical Western way as a springboard for individual success. I think the first step is you have to decide to build a different kind of family. And that is a very difficult decision. And because it's going to require you to push against your intuitions about family. And so this was kind of where it started for me. I was like, I'm seeing this kind of family in the Middle East. I want one of these families. I'm going back to America. I'm going to raise a family amidst a completely Western nest individual kind of way of thinking about family. I'm going to try to build this multi-generational team on mission there. So I think it's really important to be pretty clear about this because it's not the easy path. And then I think after that, you just need tools. You need tools because if you open up the toolbox for how to build a family and you look at the tools we have in our culture, they're all really individual tools. Like if you think about it, like our sports are all break us down into individuals. We don't compete in family team sports. School tends to break down the family into its different life stage, age groups, church, shopping, even social media. Everything is delivered, entertainment is delivered to us as individuals and is curated for the individual, not for the family together. And so you're going to need a new toolbox. And there are tools that you can use. Just some quick examples. One is I mentioned our multi-generational family meal. That is really, really important. If I could just get people to do one thing to start to build a multi-generational family, it's to have a meal, a timeless, fun meal that's not the kind of weekday quick dinner, let's connect real fast before we all go off on our own. No, some kind of evening or maybe a Sunday afternoon where you have nowhere better to go and you just experience the family-ness. So we train a lot of families on how to really develop one of these multi-generational family meals and how to make it rich and meaningful. There's also team sports. I'm a huge fan of finding team sports that you can do together as a family. We did tennis as a family. We did martial arts as a family. We've done pickleball as a family. My buddy started this whole league, and there's a bunch of different people doing family kickball leagues, and he sort of tweaked the rules so that you can do this with like literally 6-month-old and an 18-year-old and really have fun. So
family kickball tournaments is some of the most fun and laughter that you guys have.
It's a great tool. So we need tools. We need lots and lots of tools. So family teams, this is where we are trying to basically collect all the tools and distribute them and train and activate them in different families. That's our goal. And so there's more advanced tools like starting a family business like what you guys are doing and what we've done. That I think can really be powerful for the family. So there's multi-generational family land, right? There are so many, there's ministries or like what you guys said, you described in India. That is so important to find a mission that your whole family can contribute to together, go back to maybe on an annual basis. We've done that as well. That is so important. That can really help. So you need to start to just maybe every 3 to 6 months bring online another tool that is going to lead your family in this direction. And in a few years, you're going to find yourself with a completely transformed family.
And your family teams, the program is so good because it's like it can be bite-sized. You can jump in as deep as you want right away.
Yes.
But some of these things, like just doing one has been life-giving. I remember, I don't know, we've always been good at family meals together, but now having a multi-generational family, like that's a highlight. And now we've also trained, like we have 9 kids, and a lot of times we'll do a breakfast and bring the grandparents over. And we've slowly incorporated a devotion that sometimes the kids will help lead, and then a game, and the kids help make the meal. And like people look at that like, oh, we could never do that. Well, yeah, at first I was making the food, and it was all sorts of crazy. And the kids, like I remember talking to you a year ago, I'm like, how do I get 9 kids to shut up at the table and just like enjoy each other, because it just feels like chaos and I'm so stressed out. And guess what it was? Oh, training.
Yes.
Adjust the expectations up front and like take all my business skills and actually like treat it as a team versus just like I'm this useless, I don't know how to do this as a man and an adult. Like, no, you got skills, treat it like a team. Like, and now it's like the greatest parts of our week. And it's like taking the tool and just kind of slowly evolving it. And like I know you're starting another business with your son, and you're like, and that's probably a new season. And very fun and stressful and
Yes. Yeah. My
learning
goal is to start a
skills.
business with each of my kids. Definitely my son, my son-in-law, I have another son-in-law on the way, and he and I are starting to work on a business together. Yeah, I love this. I love getting to do this. Like, let's do my wife and our oldest daughter started a quilt shop, and then they went online and it did like the
Yeah.
whole thing. So yeah, I love the economic. We have a whole different program that because that is a little advanced, and people, it's certainly not
Yes.
necessary. You can work a normal job and build a family team. But
Okay.
if you want to start building some family assets, we like to coach people in that because it does tend to integrate everything in a really dynamic way.
Yeah.
People start to see and start to need each other and start to think about
Right.
maybe businesses that really fit the skills of each member of the family, the husband wife team as well as the kids. And so I'm a huge fan of that because the economic
Really.
pressure on the other direction is that if oftentimes there's not some kind of enterprise the family's working on together, oftentimes the kids as they get older they have to move away from family just for economic
Mm.
reasons. And so we wanted to like make sure that that was never a necessity. Like you don't have to work with our
Yeah.
family businesses. You can start your own thing, or you can get a job somewhere. But we wanted that to be an option because we need this to really
Yeah.
we want to keep our family together.
That's right. That's good. All right, we're about out of time. One question I always like to ask all my guests, um, and I wanted to figure out, let people know how to get involved. Number one is like, what the question be like at the end of Jeremy's life, like what do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah. Well, I ultimately want to be remembered for my total allegiance to Jesus as Lord and King. Like that is I think that's the reason why that's the only thing that makes me safe as a patriarch. Like I think that
Yeah.
I cannot be some kind of if I was just some kind of selfish person that was out for myself, like my family, and then I need to lead the way. We need to have allegiance to another kingdom and another king.
Good.
And I really want people to be able to look at my life and see, wow, like Jeremy really obeyed Jesus. Like and I want my kids to see that. I don't have any hope that if they just follow their heart and do what is going to make them happy, they're going to have a good life. Like that is, we know that it's another experiment we're trying that does not work. We
Good.
need, we need to live a life of allegiance to another kingdom. So yeah, that's the driving force of me and my wife's life. We both are committed
What about the
to
Pryor
Christ.
family?
Yes.
In the Pryor family, is that kind of all encompassing of that
Yes.
too?
Yeah. I want each of my kids to follow Jesus. I want us to literally lay our lives down for his kingdom. At that
Good.
point, as we do that, that's what I think is going to ultimately keep our family strong and united. I
Yeah.
don't believe, yeah, that selfish ambitions are gonna do that. And I don't believe that
Yeah.
that's actually true about reality itself. I think that we live in a world
Good.
in which we live in a monarchy that is led by Jesus as King. So that's what I
Sure.
care about ultimately.
Yeah. What people need to know is like Jeremy is probably one of the foremost thought leaders, and that influences me and my kind of thinking and how I interpret, like, understand Jesus and the kingdom and family in really deep ways. He has a couple podcasts, has a book. If you like, if this is like even of interest, you need to just, it's worth to check out. It's something I'll never miss. So kind of share your book, your team, and how they can get more information
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
all
So
of
the book's called Family Revision. So it's the kind of the original paradigm shifting kind of ideas behind what we're describing, what Ryan and I are talking through here. And then you can go to familyteams.com, get all the information. We have a Family Teams podcast where we just talk about this topic. There's also Jeremy Pryor podcast, which is either my wife or some of my kids, and we talk about whatever is on my mind, which is a very broad set of topics. But you can check that out if you're interested. Yeah, that
I love that you incorporate your family and your kids are involved in your podcast and all of that. They do your ads on your
yeah
podcast. Like
yeah
you are putting it into practice, and you're like, when you talk about, like, when people say, "Oh, a patriarch," oh, what a horrible word to say. But I think you do it such a beautiful job at exemplifying that for people. Like, you're serving. You are a servant leader to your family and to Jesus, and it's like, and it exudes out of all the work that you're doing. And if we get more people kind of doing this, man, our world's going to look much, much different.
Man, thanks,
So-
Ryan. Well, I love watching what you're doing with your family, and especially the way that you and your wife have really served and you're redeeming multiple family lines, not just your own, which has been so encouraging for me to see. I've been very inspired by it.
Oh, well, thank you. All right, guys. Well, make sure you like and subscribe. And until next week, may you unleash your purpose. You can prosper in business, faith, and life.
Thanks for joining us for the Unleash Your Purpose podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. We'll see you next week.